In 2010, scientists sequenced DNA from a 40,000-year-old finger bone found in a Siberian cave. They expected to find either Neanderthal or human DNA. They'd discovered a completely unknown species of human that lived alongside us. And then the tests got weird. When they compared that DNA to modern humans, they found something that shouldn't be possible. 2 to 4% of your DNA, if you're of European or Asian descent, comes from this species. You're not entirely human. You're a hybrid, and nobody told you because scientists only confirmed it 15 years ago. The species is called Denisovans. We found exactly 5 bones and 3 teeth from them total. That's it. But their DNA is inside billions of people right now, giving you traits that pure Homo sapiens never had. And the implications destroy everything you learned about human evolution. We didn't evolve in a straight line from ape to human. We evolved as a tangled web of different human species that interbred, competed, and merged into what you are today. You're not Homo sapiens. You're Homo sapiens, plus Neanderthal, plus Denisovan, plus potentially 2 or 3 other species we haven't even identified yet. In 2008, Russian archaeologists were excavating Denisova Cave in Siberia's Altai Mountains. They found a finger bone. Small, child-sized, around 40,000 years old based on the sediment layer. They sent it to Svante Pääbo's lab at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, the only lab in the world that could sequence ancient DNA that degraded. Pääbo's team extracted DNA and started sequencing. They expected Neanderthal. Neanderthals were known to live in that region and time period. The first results came back wrong. The DNA didn't match Neanderthals. They assumed contamination and ran it again. Same result. They ran it a third time. Same result. The DNA was human-like, but not human. Not Neanderthal. Not Homo sapiens. Something else. They'd found a new species of human from a single finger bone. They named it Denisovan after the cave. And then they started comparing that DNA to modern humans to see if there was any overlap. There shouldn't have been. Denisovans went extinct 30,000 years ago, and extinct species don't leave DNA in living populations. Except Denisovans did. Between 2 to 6% of your DNA isn't from Homo sapiens. When scientists compared Denisovan DNA to modern human populations, they found exact genetic matches in people living today, not similar DNA. Exact matches. Sections of Denisovan genomes sitting inside modern human chromosomes like they were copied and pasted there. Here's the breakdown by ancestry. If you're of European descent, 2 to 3% Neanderthal DNA, trace amounts of Denisovan DNA. If you're of East Asian descent, 2 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, 0.2% Denisovan DNA. If you're of Melanesian descent, Papua New Guinea, Aboriginal Australian, 2% Neanderthal DNA, 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. If you're of sub-Saharan African descent, negligible amounts of either, but recent studies found DNA from yet another unknown human species. You are a hybrid. This isn't metaphorical. When your ancestors left Africa 70,000 years ago, they encountered other human species that had left Africa hundreds of thousands of years earlier. You are the descendant of those children. But here's what makes this absolutely wild. We found 5 Denisovan bones total. 5. From a species that lived across Asia for potentially 200,000 years. We know they existed primarily from the DNA they left in us. We're reconstructing an entire extinct human species from genetic fragments scattered across billions of living people. It's functional. It codes for traits. And scientists are now identifying exactly which of your characteristics come from extinct human species. When Homo sapiens arrived, they acquired those adaptations through interbreeding rather than evolving them independently. Immune system genes, particularly HLA alleles, that help fight infections. A 2011 study found that up to 50% of one variant of the HLA-A gene in Europeans came from Neanderthals. You're fighting off diseases with an immune system partially designed by another species. Hair and skin texture genes, red hair variants, straight hair genes, and certain skin thickness traits all show Neanderthal origin from Denisovans. Modern humans inherited even stranger traits. The EPAS, one gene in Tibetan populations. This gene allows Tibetans to live at high altitude without getting altitude sickness. It's why Tibetans can live comfortably at 14,000 feet, while lowlanders struggle at 8,000 feet. Cold adaptation genes in Inuit populations. Denisovan DNA helped Inuits survive Arctic conditions by regulating body fat distribution and metabolism. Immune genes in Melanesians, populations in Papua New Guinea, carry Denisovan immune genes that protect against tropical diseases that don't exist in other parts of the world. And their children inherited those adaptations instantly. Interbreeding was an evolutionary shortcut that let humans colonize the entire planet in 50,000 years instead of 500,000. We keep finding more human species. We interbred with Neanderthals, and Denisovans aren't the only ones. In 2019, scientists analyzed DNA from sub-Saharan African populations and found genetic sequences that don't match any known human species. The DNA suggests interbreeding with a ghost population, a human species we haven't found fossils of yet, but that definitely existed because their DNA is in modern Africans. In 2021, analysis of Denisovan DNA revealed they themselves were hybrids. Denisovans had interbred with another unknown human species that split from the common ancestor even earlier. So Denisovans were hybrids who then hybridized with Homo sapiens. We're hybrids of hybrids. In 2018, scientists found a bone fragment from Denisova cave that belonged to a teenager who died 90,000 years ago. She was a first-generation hybrid. Her existence proves that different human species weren't just occasionally interbreeding. They were doing it regularly enough that we're finding direct evidence of mixed species children. The picture emerging is chaotic. Between 50,000 and 30,000 years ago, at least 4 or 5 different human species were living in Europe and Asia simultaneously. Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, the Denisovans' mystery ancestors, and potentially others we haven't identified. They overlapped geographically. They interbred. They produced hybrid children who survived and had children of their own. And then suddenly, 30,000 years ago, only Homo sapiens remained. Every other human species went extinct within a few thousand years of each other. We don't know why. Climate change, disease, competition for resources, or direct conflict, nobody knows. But the result is that we're the only human species left, carrying fragments of all the others inside our DNA like ghosts. Here's the question nobody can answer. Why did Neanderthals and Denisovans go extinct while Homo sapiens survived? It wasn't intelligence. Neanderthals had larger brains than Homo sapiens. Brain size doesn't equal intelligence. But Neanderthals were making sophisticated tools, using fire, burying their dead with ceremony, and creating art. They weren't primitive. It wasn't physical capability. Neanderthals were stronger than Homo sapiens. They were adapted to Ice Age Europe for 300,000 years. They should have had every advantage. The leading theories Homo sapiens had larger population sizes and more complex social networks. Even if individual Neanderthals were as capable as individual humans, larger populations mean more innovation, more genetic diversity, and more resilience to disasters. A disease that kills 30% of a population of 10,000 Neanderthals is catastrophic. The same disease hitting a population of 100,000 Homo sapiens is devastating but survivable. Some scientists argue Neanderthals and Denisovans didn't go extinct. They were genetically absorbed. If a small Neanderthal population of 50,000 interbred with a Homo sapiens population of 500,000, within a few generations the distinct Neanderthal population disappears, but their genes remain. The species didn't die out. It merged. The period between 40,000 and 30,000 years ago saw rapid climate fluctuations. Neanderthals were specialized for cold environments. When the climate became unpredictable, Adaptability mattered more than specialization. The dark possibility. When Homo sapiens encountered other human species, we didn't just compete, we exterminated them. There's limited evidence for large-scale violence, but the coincidence of Homo sapiens' arrival and Neanderthal extinction in every region suggests competition was a factor. The truth is probably all of the above. Small populations weakened by climate change, absorbed through interbreeding and competing with larger Homo sapiens populations for resources, death by 1,000 cuts rather than a single cause. The old story of human evolution was linear. Ape-like ancestors evolved into Homo erectus, evolved into archaic Homo sapiens, evolved into modern humans. A single line of descent with some dead-end branches. That story is wrong. The real story is a braided stream. Multiple human species evolved from common ancestors in Africa. Some left Africa early, Homo erectus 1.8 million years ago. Neanderthal ancestors, 600,000 years ago. Denisovan ancestors, maybe 400,000 years ago. They spread across Europe and Asia, adapted to local environments, and became distinct species. Then Homo sapiens evolved in Africa around 300,000 years ago. Around 70,000 years ago, groups of Homo sapiens left Africa and encountered all these other human species. And instead of remaining separate, they interbred, repeatedly, in multiple locations. Over tens of thousands of years, we're not the end product of a single evolutionary line. We're the genetic blending of multiple human species that evolved separately for hundreds of thousands of years and then merged. This explains weird things about human genetics, why genetic diversity is higher in Africa than anywhere else. African populations didn't interbreed with Neanderthals or Denisovans, so they maintained more of the original Homo sapiens genetic variation. Why non-African populations have less genetic diversity despite covering more territory. The small groups that left Africa went through population bottlenecks and then absorbed genes from other species, homogenizing their genomes. Why humans could adapt to extreme environments so quickly. We didn't evolve high-altitude adaptation or cold tolerance from scratch. We acquired them from species that had already spent 100,000 plus years evolving them. In 2019, scientists analyzed DNA from sediment in Denisova Cave, not from bones, but from dirt. DNA degrades and seeps into soil. They extracted enough genetic material to confirm that Denisovans, Neanderthals, and Homo sapiens all lived in the same cave at different time periods, suggesting Denisovans were spread across Southeast Asia and possibly reached island chains we didn't know they'd colonized. In 2023, AI analysis of modern human genomes identified additional segments that likely came from unknown human species. The DNA is there, but we don't have fossils to match it to yet. The story isn't finished. Every year we find more extinct human DNA in living populations. Every year we revise the map of where these species lived. Every year we identify more traits you inherited from species that aren't Homo sapiens. The DNA discovery that changes everything about humanity is that humanities is plural. You're not one species, you're the living continuation of at least three. The Neanderthal genes helping your immune system fight infections right now. The Denisovan genes letting some of you live at high altitude or survive Arctic cold. The ghost population DNA from Africa that we can detect but haven't identified yet. These aren't ancient history. They're functional parts of your biology today. We've spent 200 years thinking Homo sapiens evolved separately and conquered the world through superiority. That's not what happened. We absorbed everyone we met, took their evolutionary adaptations, and became something none of the original species were. We survived not through purity, but through genetic mixing. The other human species aren't gone. They're inside you. Your DNA is their DNA. You're the hybrid descendant of a genetic merger that happened when multiple human species collided during the last ice age. That's the discovery. You're not entirely human. You never were.